We are starting our session number 2, which is on different approaches taken by different countries in regard to regulation of Islamic banking in different parts of the world. Let me welcome the panelists of this session who come from a very diverse background. It's a very distinguished panel we have on different regulatory approaches or different regulatory models on Islamic banking and finance. I have with all these friends over here, Qadir Latif. He is a senior partner and head of Islamic finance with Clifford Chance. Qadir has been in the industry for very long time. He's not that old, but his contribution to Islamic banking is very, very significant. Next to Qadir, we have Neil Miller. Neil Miller has been, again, in the Islamic finance industry for about 23 years, or maybe between 20 to 23 years. Previously, he was with a law firm in the capacity of head of Islamic finance with that law firm. He advised on a very, very large number of transactions on Islamic banking and finance, and he brings a lot of experience to this panel. Currently, he is head of Islamic finance with KPMG, based in Dubai, but he lives nowhere, and all the time he's traveling. Next to Neil is another very good friend of mine, Kamal Mia. Kamal Mia, again, he is a lawyer by background. Previously, he has served with a number of banks offering Islamic financial services. Most notably, he was with the founding team of HSBC Amana. From there, he moved to Saudi Hollandi Bank as their head of Islamic finance. And at present, he is head of asset finance with the same bank, i.e. Saudi Hollandi Bank. We have our fourth panelist, Mr. Salimullah Khan. He is still not with us, and I believe that he would be coming very soon. He comes from the Central Bank of Pakistan, State Bank of Pakistan, and I hope that he would be joining us very soon. Mudassir Siddiqui, again, a very dear friend of mine. He is at present with SNR Denton, which was previously known as Denton Wild Sapt. I'm happy that this is now an easier to pronounce name as compared to the previous one. Oliver Agha, it just happens to be the case we didn't plan. All these guys, okay, they are actually lawyers, okay, and probably this is the reason, okay, they would like to talk about the regulatory approaches to Islamic banking and finance. We have now with us Mr. Salimullah Khan from State Bank of Pakistan. Oliver, he runs his own law company called Oliver & Co., and there is a sister company as well, Agha and Shamsi, right? Agha & Co. and Agha and Shamsi. And Oliver has the privilege of setting up the first ever Islamic law firm. We have heard of Islamic banks, Islamic insurance companies, takafuls, Islamic fund management companies. Although the major players like Clifford Chance, Norton Rose, and others, okay, they have been practicing Islamic banking and finance for long, but coming up with the idea of first Islamic law firm or first Sharia-compliant law firm, this is a credit which goes to Oliver. We missed Mr. Salimullah Khan. He is the director of Islamic banking with State Bank of Pakistan. And as the lead person who is involved in regulating Islamic financial services in the country, he would bring the perspective on the topic from the regulator's viewpoint. Now, before I go to our distinguished panel, I would like to make an opening statement. There are 3 or 4 models of Islamic banking worldwide. One is a fully fledged, complete Islamic model. And we have countries like Iran and Sudan, which have their financial sector completely Islamized. There was an attempt by Pakistan as well, but that was not successful. This was something which was alluded to by the governor of State Bank of Pakistan. So at present, we have at least 2 countries in the world which claim to have Islamized their financial services industry and the whole financial sector. Then we have a model which is known as a dual banking system. And dual banking system can be divided into A and B. There are countries which would allow only Islamic banks to offer Islamic banking within a dual banking arrangement. And by dual banking arrangement, I mean the system allows conventional banks and Islamic banks to operate side by side. The one preference or one model within this model is that the regulators would not allow conventional banks to offer Islamic banking services through a window model. One example is Malaysia, which on a retail banking level doesn't allow conventional banks to offer Islamic retail banking. Rather, you must have a separate fully fledged Islamic banking license or Islamic retail banking license to offer these services. Qatar followed the suit. Earlier this year, they announced that the conventional banks in the country would not be allowed to offer Islamic banking services, and I believe from 1st of January that law will become applicable. Lebanon is another country where Islamic windows are not acceptable. So we have full system Islamized, dual banking system A, i.e. only Islamic banks or specialized institutions offering Islamic financial services, and they exist side by side with conventional banks. Then we have another dual banking system where both the players, Islamic as well as conventional players, not only coexist, but they can offer Islamic banking services as well. And this is a model which is popular almost everywhere outside these 3 countries, i.e. Malaysia, Qatar, and Lebanon. The examples, notable examples are UAE, Bahrain, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and so on. So this is approach number 3. Approach number 4 is a rather difficult one. And there are some countries, especially if we look at a country like Ethiopia. Ethiopia, through their banking regulations, they say that a conventional bank can offer Islamic banking services through a window. There is no provision for setting up a separate Islamic bank. So we have the 4th model, i.e. only conventional banks should be allowed to offer Islamic banking services, and there should not be any Islamic bank. So given these 3 dimensions of this global model of Islamic banking and finance, we would ask our panelists, what do they think about these different models and what kind of implications we can draw from these different experiences with Islamic banking worldwide. And of course, our panelists are here, but you are here as well. And if you have any questions, you want to make any comment, if you could identify yourself, I would be very happy to make this session very interactive. The panelists on this side and the delegates on this side, if there is anything you would like to bring to attention of the people in this hall, I would be very glad to help you on that. So let us start with a kind of general 2-minute statement by the members of the panel. And I would suggest that it should be a very brief 2-minute statement to set the stage. And of course, we would come to some specific questions. There will be some questions from my side. And of course, I believe the delegates, they would like to raise some questions as well. Qudir, if we could start with you.
Sure. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning, everybody. It's a very interesting topic because it's a very subjective topic. I think everybody, or most people on the panel may have very different views as to what is the best way forward. I suspect every regulator would say that their model is the best practice and should be adopted in the realms of international best practice. So I think it's going to be a very interesting session because you're going to hear very divergent views. Now, I think the one thing that everybody will agree on is that the regulatory model that should evolve should put all the financial institutions in that particular country on an equal competitive footing. The regulators shouldn't be putting in place a system whereby conventional banks are preferred above Islamic banks, and neither should we be putting in place a system whereby Islamic banks are preferred above conventional banks. It's very important that the regulator puts in place a system whereby everybody is regulated and everybody is treated equally. This is the only way of ensuring fair competition. It's also important that we don't forget what the regulator's job is. The regulator's job ultimately is to put in place a system to protect the consumers. They have to put in place a system that promotes the stability of the banking system, and the stability can be checked in various ways. We have capital adequacy rules, we have various other exotic means and complicated means of checking the stability, but ultimately the regulator's job is financial prudence, governance of the system for the benefits of the consumer. One additional comment I would make in my opening remarks is that we can't disregard the importance of the Sharia scholars and the Sharia board. Different regulators, again, adopt different views as to whether we should have a central Sharia board or whether we should have a Sharia board at the level of each of the individual banks, irrespective of whether it's a wholly owned or wholly Sharia compliant bank or whether it's an Islamic window. And again, I'm sure everybody's going to have different views, but I'm based in Dubai, and even though my mandate within the firm is a global mandate, in the UAE, as Humayun was alluding to, we have all kinds of Islamic banks. We have wholly owned Islamic banks, i.e. banks which are fully Sharia compliant. We have international banks which have Islamic windows, and we have local conventional banks which have Islamic windows. They all are regulated by the UAE Central Bank, and it affords a level playing field where everybody competes on issues other than Sharia. They compete on pricing, they compete on efficiency, they compete on every other aspect other than Sharia, because every bank has its own Sharia board.
Thank you very much. Now, two very important points raised by Qudir. First, the regulation should attempt to provide a level playing field to both conventional and Islamic banks. Now, of course, I think this is a very important area. Should a central bank or should a country have a centralized Sharia board, or Sharia function should be led, should be given to the market forces? This is a very, very important issue, and I'm sure the panelists would have their views on this one. Neil?
Good morning. Salam alaikum, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that where I would start is that I agree with pretty much everything Qudir has said about the role of the regulator and their fundamental sort of purpose. But I do think that when we start digging deeper, we have to come up with some fairly fundamental policies that should apply across a wide range of countries and regulatory regimes. On one hand, I find myself saying that there is no right model, and I don't think you can necessarily say that specific models are wrong. I think that you have to look at the demographics of every country that you're operating in. I think you have to look at the, whether that country is Muslim or non-Muslim or Muslim majority or not. I think that has an impact. I think you have to look at the business opportunities in the country that you're dealing with. Oman, with its population, is going to be a very different proposition for businessmen, whether generally, if you're looking at wholesale banking, commercial banking, than, say, Saudi Arabia, and then if you look at a country like Indonesia, or if you look at a country like Turkey. Fundamentally, all of these countries are different, so it means you have to come back to basic principles. Qadir talked about some of those, but I also think that my experience suggests that we have to look very closely at things like segregation. I think that and by segregation, I mean whether or not an Islamic window operating under a conventional umbrella can genuinely provide and demonstrate that it is providing segregated Islamic financial services to its clients. I did find the steps that were taken in Qatar fascinating, and I've thought about them quite a great deal since it happened. I probably find myself moving towards a model that says the window approach is not perhaps the right way to go. I think that Islamic banking is different. It has to be seen to be different, and you've got to make sure that you maintain those differences. And I'm not convinced that's always demonstrably clear in a window model. But outside of that, I think that there are, you know, a whole range of different legal models that can be adopted for setting up Islamic financial institutions. The other thing that still concerns me, and I pick up on the points that the governor of the State Bank of Pakistan said, and I found his speech fascinating, actually. In particular, what I found most fascinating is that he hopefully is proving the rule wrong. One of the things that my career has shown to me over the years I've been involved in banking is that as a general rule, bankers don't really learn from past mistakes. And I was in Bahrain when the attempt to bring a wholesale Islamic banking system into Pakistan happened. And we looked across and we were trying to understand how that would roll out at the time. And we saw that it didn't work, and then we had to pick up some of the pieces as legal counsel on transactions. So I was delighted to hear what the governor was saying about the evolutionary approach that Pakistan is taking now, which I think is the right approach. I think that a lot of what he said gives us lessons for Oman, but for any other country that's looking to introduce Islamic finance. But my main point is that I think the shape of Islamic banking is not yet resolved. I think that there are banks out there who are trying to do too much, and I think that we may have to look at seeing a more institutional segregation of different types of activities, because I think that there are some fundamental issues that customers and clients are concerned about that mean that if you're trying to provide services to a retail depositor, you can't necessarily provide that in an institution that is then doing other types of risky activity that customer perhaps doesn't understand. So I think there's a role for looking at the shape of the Islamic finance industry, understanding in more detail what specific institutions can and cannot do or should not do. And I think we're going to see that evolve actually over the next 5 to 10 years. And that will affect the regulatory framework.